Hello and welcome to this week's Happy Hyena. So this week we're taking a look at leader of the Collaboration Party, aka the puppeteered corpse of what was once the British Labour Party, and the haunted waxwork that leads it, was mouthing off on This Morning about Tony Blair's knighthood. Let's jump in and see what this is all about, shall we?
A petition calling for the Prime Minister to intervene over the knighthood given to Tony Blair has more than 530,000 signatures. Anti-war campaigners say the knighthood is a kick in the teeth for the people of Iraq.
So noted war criminal Tony B. Liar has been handed a knighthood by the Queen. And I feel sort of conflicted about this because on the one hand, Tony Blair obviously shouldn't be given a knighthood because he was a disaster, an absolute disaster, and probably should be in prison instead of being rewarded. Probably should be straight off to jail with him. But failing that, no knighthood would be my preference. However, on the other hand, I don't care about what the Queen gives knighthoods to. It's sort of not really that surprising in one sense that a sort of horrible, outdated and fundamentally conservative institution such as the royal family would be handing out awards to outdated and fundamentally conservative maniacs like Tony Blair. And history hasn't been kind to Blair. He's generally hated in Britain, so it's quite a controversial move, as you can imagine. And so hence the petition with a lot of signatures on it. And the reason why Tony Blair is hated so much by the British, if you don't know this because you're American or you're very young or whatever, the reason is basically he comes from the kind of Clinton school of running a left-wing party, i.e. just running it like it's a right-wing party and being as kind of outrageously conservative as he possibly can muster, selling out to corporations and doing all sorts of other horrible shit, including getting us into the war in Iraq, which was basically an unmitigated disaster in every measurable way. But maybe we've moved past that. Maybe we've moved past that idiotic 1990s centrist idiocy and moved forward with the times into something a bit more progressive, into something a bit more pragmatic, something where we've sort of learnt from our mistakes and we know to do something better in the future. And who better to answer that than the current Labour leader, which I say under the proviso that basically means nothing at all at this point, Keir Starmer.
Well, let's talk about all of these issues with the current Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer.
Played here by athlete's foot in a suit.
Who joins us now. Very good morning to you and Happy New Year.
Good morning and Happy New Year to all of you and your viewers.
Thank you very much indeed. So this is a bit of a thorny political problem for you, isn't it? The knighthood given to the former Labour leader, Tony Blair. What do you make of the fact that more than 500,000 people want him not just not to have it, but to be stripped of it now he's been given it?
Well, look, I don't think it's a thorny issue for me at all. I think Tony Blair deserves the honour. He won 3 elections. He was a very successful Prime Minister. I haven't got time this morning to list all of his many achievements.
This sort of reminds me of that joke. I don't know if you've heard it. I think I first came across it in the Preacher comics, which are awesome. You should definitely read them if you get the chance. But there's a joke in there when there's a guy who he talks about the achievements of his life and how he helped build the space shuttle, I think, and helped do all these things. Do they call him Donny the space shuttle designer? No, they don't. Do they call him Donny the philanthropist? No, they don't. You one dog. And they called him, of course, Donny the dog fucker. This is sort of a case of that. It kind of doesn't matter what else Tony Blair did, you know? It's sort of like, well, you know that Jeffrey Dahmer had great choice in cardigans, great taste in cardigans. And you know what? He occasionally donated money to charity. You're like, well, what about the murders, you idiot? That's the bit that everyone really cares about and kind of wipes out all of the other achievements, be they good or bad, that the person had. Quite apart from the fact that Tony Blair, apart from being almost directly responsible for the deaths of the needless deaths of thousands and thousands of innocents, he was also responsible for starting the major sell-off of the NHS, an absolutely disastrous policy that has led to thousands and thousands of deaths now, where we don't have the infrastructure to cope with COVID because of his starting to sell it off. Tony Blair was, of course, an absolute disaster. An absolute disaster. And the thing is, what it's really telling is that Keir Starmer is not trying to distance himself from that disaster, because that's what he should be doing. What he should be doing is going, well, there was this fantastically unpopular politician who history has remembered as an absolute villain, who did all sorts of disastrous stuff, which has led to thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths of our citizenry and the citizenry of the people of Iraq. And instead of distancing himself from that, he's tying his flag to that mast. He's effectively saying, I'm not going to move forward. I want to drag the Labour Party and the country back into the 90s, despite the fact that every principle that the Blairite shift in the 90s was based on has been proved in the long run to be false.
I don't think it's thorny at all. I think he deserves
Well, I'll point out why it's
Obviously,
thorny,
I respect the fact that people have different views.
Yeah, but not just different views, Sakir. The fact of the matter is, the Iraq War is a huge thorn in the side, not just of Tony Blair, but of the Labour Party. I mean, many people blame the catastrophe over the Iraq War for the fact that Labour can't get anywhere near power right now.
Particularly as the current leader won't distance himself from that decision, won't distance himself from the leadership of the party who made that catastrophe happen. So in a sense, he's just blatantly advertising, yeah, we're the same. You know those guys you absolutely hate who did an absolute disaster for everyone involved. We want to do the same as that. We basically are the same guys. Can you vote for me? Well, the answer is going to be clearly no. No one's going to vote for that.
The Shilcott inquiry said the judgments about the severity of the threat posed by Iraq's weapons of mass destruction was presented with a certainty that was not justified. The planning and preparations for Iraq after Saddam Hussein were wholly inadequate. I mean, worse than that, there are families of those who died fighting who are furious about this honour for Sir Tony Blair, and, of course, the cost in lives to the people of Iraq.
Which some reports have at 600,000 civilians.
Yeah, look, I understand there are strong views on the Iraq War. There were back at the time, there still are. But that doesn't detract from the fact that Tony Blair was a very successful Prime Minister of this country, made huge differences.
Yes, okay, Charlie Manson may have been sort of responsible for the deaths of several people and tried to incite a race war to kickstart the apocalypse. Yes, but on the other hand, did write a couple of good songs. So, yeah.
To the lives of millions of people in this country, won 3 elections, and therefore I think he deserves the honour.
Yeah, he conned his way to power, that doesn't justify anything. It's sort of a bit like, imagine you're in like a small town, maybe in the Wild West, and along comes a guy selling like snake oil or some sort of magic potion, like an elixir, and he says it will cure anything. And people take that elixir, and then they all get sick. They get like the shits, and they come out in hives, and they can't breathe, and many of them die. And they go to find that guy, and he's buggered off to the next town, so they can't get their money back, and they can't complain, and they can't, they don't know where he is. But then, like, a few years later, another guy shows up to that town, works for the same company as the guy who sold the snake oil, and he's like, hey guys, wanna buy some more snake oil? That's Keir Starmer. That's what Keir Starmer's doing. No, it works once. You can't come back and try and sell us the same snake oil that made everyone sick the first time, and it was an absolute disaster. You can't run the same con job twice. It doesn't matter if you won 3 elections in the past. If you maintain this link to Blair, there is 0% chance that people will fall for it again. It's not going to happen, mate. And that's the sort of level of contempt that Keir Starmer and the new Labour people have for the British public. They think we're fucking stupid and we'll just fall for the same shit all over again. The same neoliberal, trickle-down economics, grueling inequality, coated in a thin veneer of politically correct language and mad obsession with PR, combined with with lots of death. People don't want that. It's a turd sandwich. No one's going to buy it. So what can we learn from this? Well, basically, I think a really telling thing about Keir Starmer and, by extension, his party is that he's absolutely obsessed with electoral success. You know, his justification for everything wrong that Blair did, and the thing that he kept mentioning was that he won 3 elections in the past. And in his mind, that sort of justifies everything. He's absolutely obsessed with winning elections, and which, you know, means that he's willing to ditch any values, because he doesn't really have any values really to begin with, doesn't really understand the importance or the value in values or principles or ethics in any sense. It's all sort of just about winning, which of course means that he's completely unelectable, because that's such a distasteful quality in a politician, you know? It's sort of like if you go to a restaurant and they're not interested in delivering you food, they're just interested in taking your money, you're not going to be wanting to go to that restaurant, are you? And you know, not only that, the tactics that he's employing are straight out of the 90s. We're not living in the 90s. That was a long time ago, okay? Things are different now. People are different. We've experienced more things. We've experienced 2 recessions and a pandemic. We've experienced the idiocy of Brexit and Brexit's fallout. It's not the 90s anymore. You know, it's sort of like to Keir Starmer and his people, that was the sort of golden age of party politics where PR and all of that kind of stuff seemed to be working. Doesn't really work anymore, you know? And it wasn't a golden age. It was awful. It was an age of surface level gloss over content, at least politically. And if he was intelligent, in going after electoral success, he wouldn't be like trying to put his flag next to a war criminal, a fantastically unpopular war criminal. It's almost like he's actively trying to be as unelectable as possible. It's completely bizarre. It just doesn't make any sense on any level. And that is unfortunately the current state of the UK Labour Party. But you know, I feel like this isn't a tenable situation for much longer. So if you think it's bad, and it is bad, it's bad now, of course, and it's going to be a tough road ahead, don't get me wrong, and we will have to fight for it. But I do feel that it's very unlikely that Keir Starmer makes it to the next election. So look after yourselves and each other. Hippie hyena out. Goodbye.